So greetings and welcome to an educational otherwise, an occasional conversation series where we dream together in public about teaching and learning for collective futures. I'm Django Paris, and I'm really grateful to be on these beautiful Coast Salish homelands. I am joining you from the Bank Center for Educational Justice here in the College of Education at the University of Washington. And I'm really thrilled to be joined by wonderful people, co-authors of this beautiful new book, Storing Son Jarocho Fandango, which just came out with Teachers College Press in our CSP series. So huge congratulations to you all. Just take a look at that beautiful cover for a moment. More formally, I would like to introduce our guests for today. So we have Cuepanca Moreno Sandoval, who is an associate professor of Native American and Mexican Indigenous Studies in the Ethnic Studies Department at California State University, Stanislaus. We have Lirio Patton, clinical assistant professor of teacher education at Arizona State University, and Lirio also works with the Preparing Educators for Arizona's Indian Communities, among other roles at ASU. We also have Gregorio Roca Tavera, a scholar and member of the Son Caracol collective, a group of intergenerational learners of the Son Jarocho Fandango tradition, and also Jennifer Campos Lopez, also a scholar and member of the Son Caracol collective. Indeed, all are members of this incredible collective, all 5 authors, and have worked together in community, on campus, and across multiple spaces for several years. So welcome to you all. Ray Paris and I already knew Cuepanca and her family, but I remember first meeting you all, I think it was in summer or fall of 2020, here on Zoom, right? When we were all really incredibly isolated. And I remember just the feeling of communal bonds, of shared ancestral traditions, that really resonated across that call and across what you shared that day. And I'm so grateful that these years later you've been able to share that with the world in this way, something that I really feel like we need across these continued dire times. So thank you all. We're definitely going to spend some time talking about how you all came together, the collective, Son Jarocho, Fandango, ethnic studies, and many things. But to kind of get us going in the spirit of this, and to invite you all in this work, if we might start with a song.
Sure. Thank you so much for having us, Django, and everybody who's listening from afar. We are so honored and humbled to be here with all of you and to share some of the work that we have been doing in community with all of you. And in the tradition of Fandango and Son Jarocho, when a Fandango starts, the very first song that we sing is Siki City. And Siki City is a way of asking the land, the waters, the flowers, the people permission to get started. And this song can last 5 seconds. It can last 5 hours. And just depends on the context and the place. So I'll go ahead and get us started then.
Señores, y el pueblo en general también saludo a las flores.
So
Hey, thank you so much. That was gorgeous. What an amazing and gorgeous welcoming. Thank you so much for inviting us in that way. I thought it would be great for folks to hear how you all came to Son Jarocho Fandango, how you came to the collective, or how it came to you. So maybe Lirio or Cuepanca, you want to kind of get us started there, and then we can kind of just hear from everyone and start to understand, what this project is, how it reaches so far back to the ancestors and so far forward to future generations.
yes, absolutely. I think in the spirit of calling in all of our ancestors from the five of us here present on the Zoom call, but also the people who are listening across time and place, the ancestors who want to educate, to liberate. I love your t-shirt, Django, and it's just perfect for what we're about to share right now. The ancestors who are looking at this work, who look at Son Jarocho Fandango as a way of liberating ourselves. That's the first and foremost what we'd like to do. And I'm going to go ahead and burn some copali from the places of my ancestors, which is a tree resin, and it's something that has been burned for thousands of years. And we'll see that in the old temples that you see from behind me, and in a way of building, nurturing that community around this kind of work that we're doing. And it doesn't have to be through Son Jarocho Fandango. People from around the world are doing so many different ways.
That's right.
Really beautiful to celebrate. So I want to do that. And then also share that what we're about to share here is just one way of doing subversive education in these unrelenting. That this one way is community driven, it's ancestrally anchored, it is musically engaged, and for the purpose of building community in this anti-capitalist world, right? Toward what is that co-liberation? So we'll share some of that communal process in nurturing this ancestral movement with the sones that we just shared with you, with stories and our continued inquiries. So thank you again for having us. And later I'll share a little bit more about how I came into Son Jarocho Fandango. I also want to thank our teachers who have carried this genre with such care and such love, and also with such discipline. And we have big shoes to fit constantly in learning process here. So thank you again. Didio, do you want to share?
Sure. So I would agree with Cuepanca that many of us come from ancestral traditions that have survived long before us and hopefully will survive long after us. This one that we're part of and we're borrowing from is Son Jarocho Fandango, and it lives in Veracruz, Mexico, and it comes from the musical and cultural traditions of Mexico indigenous communities, Afro diasporic communities, and Spanish Iberian influences as well. So as Cuepanca mentioned, there are maestros that have carried this tradition and they share it with us, and so we benefit from that. And I think historicizing where that knowledge comes from is very important because
crucial.
It grounds us and connects us to others in many ways. I came to Son Jarocho Fandango really like when I was a student at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and there was a couple. They were partners, and they would play jaranas at events. And I think they had learned it from California, and they talked about Son Jarocho Fandango. And that was like my first little like, oh, this is something cool. It's interesting. Right. It's different. And the couple, their names were Ojos de Esme and I don't want to forget their names because they were like first ones who told me about it. Something really that became a part of my life until I moved to Arizona. And then at that time there was a lot of attacks on migrant communities, and that's so right. I became a part of some of the human rights organizations, and within that I met people like Michelle Tellez and Cuepanca Xochitl, who were involved in those communities, but
That's right.
but they were also bringing in some things of joy, and that was to learn about Son Jarocho Fandango. And so I started to learn about it through them. It would have been about, I think, 2014. And then
Yes.
I just continued on, and I have known Kwaponka since then. And that's how I became a part of this as well, this project.
I love the way that you're sharing, our ongoing, and work, toward the world we need, and that how joy and ancestral traditions and creation and coming together are so much a part of that. Some of the most joyful spaces I've been in have been movement spaces, right? And so I really appreciate that. Gregorio, you want to share a little bit?
My entry space to San Jarocho Fandango spaces was as a healing tool, mostly through student movements. When I was understanding what San Jarocho was, it was as a protest tool. And that was something that was really foundational for me because I had always seen and experienced the one way of protest is basically just being out with a microphone or a sign about something that was
Sure.
going on our campus. And for me at the time, I didn't trust my campus at the time. There was a lot of racial injustice on our campus. Uh, there was a hate group, and they were just putting, racist propaganda on our campus. And I really felt unsafe. I couldn't trust where I was. And
Mm-hmm.
then, like, there were so many just weeks of bombardment of really disgusting, just genocidal white racial
Mm-hmm.
work on a campus. Like, it made me sick. It made me
Mm-hmm.
sick. It made it really hard to attend class and be present and get
Right.
through just my regular day. But, one day, a group of musicians are there playing this beautiful music, and I'm just like, I forgot about it for one day. But
Mm-hmm.
all the terrible things that were going on our campus, and I'm just like, whoa, how did this happen? What is this?
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard this. I've
Mm-hmm.
never encountered this. This is amazing. What is going on? And
Mm.
then following it since then, I've been going to it as just a source of safety.
Mm.
It was very welcoming to be there. It was a way of connecting to a language and music I've never heard before. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, it was life-saving. And I
Yeah.
know it wasn't life-saving just for me, but it was for others that in these circles, in these communal spaces, it was something we needed and didn't have. And
Mm.
I saw it as something more impactful than some campuses have these counselor rooms, but I saw it do the work in real time. And
That's
it
right.
was so impactful that it wasn't just a closet space. It was a place to like just exist, communicate, and talk to people and just share openly.
That is, it's just so extraordinary to hear you talk about that as a student, and the ways that it held you and others. Um, Jennifer, would you like to talk a little bit about how you came to this?
Yeah, of course. So I initially heard the first blossom play a little bit of the Son Caracol, playing with the jaranas and the trees in the ethnic studies class. And they did it as a way to bring more students to be curious about what this is, what this class offers. But more than anything, that community building. And ever since that day, as I sat in my seat, just listening to this group of students, sharing a little bit of the music in front of me, in front of the class, um, I was immediately sparked with a lot of interest, curiosity, more than anything, because they spoke with a lot of passion, they sang with a lot of love. And the following semester, that's when I enrolled into the class and I joined the second blossom of Son Jarocho and with Weponka. And that really when a new part of me opened up, a new way of connecting to my identity, a way to really build community and ground ourselves. Son Jarocho really became a tool to just like
Hmm.
heal, to be in community, to build these conversations that were necessary during times that were really rough. And so Haracho really allowed me to just heal with many ways, with my status, my undocumented status,
Mhm.
but then also connect with so many people. And to this day, I'm still connecting with so many people all around. We went to conferences in Philadelphia and Mexico. So it's been very, very beautiful in the way that we just connect in so many ways through Son Jarocho and how we share space.
Hearing you both say, and I'm sure Cuepanca and Virrio, it's so beautiful to hear these offerings. Although I know you, I'm sure you already know them, but you know, and feel them. But also I'm struck by the intergenerationality, the way that you started, of course, with ancestrally anchored, but also talked about your own teachers, the folks that have carried this tradition. And here we are hearing about, you know, what it was like to be an undergraduate student, and to feel this kind of invitation. Your words, you know, life-saving and healing, really struck me. Also, Kwepanka, you had mentioned this T-shirt. I must, of course, give a huge shout out to the UW Educators for Liberation, who created this shirt as part of their work for a Free Palestine this year on this campus. And so I'm thinking about your you know, your experience, Gregorio, that you were sharing there, and also Jennifer, and what was going on your campus at that time, what continues to go on, right? And the ways that so often it's hard, we don't think of classes necessarily as a place where things like life-saving and healing might be offered, but that is, I think, a really key to some of the things that you give and share in this book, in this project. And it makes me think about something that you write early in the book. You share, and for folks that are listening, right? So the book is written collectively, and then there are narratives and testimonials, and it's just a really a gorgeous book, and one that will be unlike any that you have read. And you write, quote, "We hope that as you read, you think of your educator potential and your community's potential to root yourselves in ancestral knowledge systems, learning and practicing the ontologies and pedagogies that can offer culturally revitalizing and decolonial realities," end quote. And then later, in recounting the pedagogies of ethnic studies classes so central to the book, Kwepanka, you share the question, how might Son Jarocho Fandango nurture student voice, positive identity formation, and collective agency, end quote. And we're just hearing that, right, in terms of what Gregorio and Jennifer and all of you are sharing, and what I'm sure we're all kind of thinking about and learning as we listen. Would one of you like to share about this idea of sort of an educator potential that you're hoping people can kind of feel, take, practice from this work? So maybe we can start there.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. And thank you, everybody, for sharing your process. It's been so beautiful to hear you recount also the ways in which we bring Son Jarocho and we come here. You know, one of the questions that I ask myself when I enter here in the Central Valley is really, how do you teach voice as an educator, right? How do you teach voice? Well, you don't, right? Life experiences teach you how to really come out of our shells and exert our dignity and our potentials. And so I think when we nurture this community, and I came to Son Jarocho too because I was in that slippery slope of going into depression and anxiety. There was some things that were happening in my family that it was very difficult for me to assimilate and to actually move through. And I was in Northeast LA and at the East Side Cafe, and some of my friends were like, "Come and learn Son Jarocho with us." And my
Hmm.
whole like 3 months of learning Son Jarocho was just really crying. It was crying with the harana. It was crying with my 2 left feet. It was crying with it was just this reclamation of release. And to me, it has really shifted the way that I have lived in the world. And so as an educator, tapping into that educator potential, I think it's life experiences that you can creatively learn from, embody, and then see what happens. Share this vulnerability with students. You know, as a professor, you're not so like vulnerable, right? But terms of sharing your life stories with one another and is part of building that trust and that community. And so because Son Jarocho is not just for a 16-week semester, we then spilled over to creating this collective, you know, that people who wanted to stay engaged with the music can join us,
Right, nice.
still keep playing music, and then we'll just kind of bring in the what Jenny mentioned, the second blossom, the third blossom of the generations of students that sign up for this course, but also elementary school students, you know, younger kids who have older siblings who are playing and want to integrate, or grandmothers. You know, we have a grandmother who's just joining us. She's, you know, in her 70s, and she says,
Yes, nice.
but I want to play, you know, and so it just becomes a movement toward, you know, like talking a little about how we want to see the world and forging it, because our ancestral knowledge systems are much older than colonization.
Lirio, does anything come to you as you're hearing Kwepanka share about this educator potential and what it was? I love the sharing about how the collective grew from these, you know, experiences that were structured or experienced at least, you know, within a class. But then, in a sense, the 16 weeks, of course, can't contain such a thing, nor can these, you know, these campuses, these institutions. And so the idea that it grows and continues, that, you know, for folks that want to continue, I think is really important for us to think about what happens after a class, you know. Lirio, yeah.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And when I was thinking about educator potential in the process of writing the book with my colleagues, I was also just thinking of all my experiences as a teacher, like the teacher that has worked in elementary classrooms and middle school classrooms and high school classrooms and college classrooms, and how so often there is this disconnect between the learning that we say should be happening in the classroom and then the things that's actually sustain, the ways of being that sustain our communities, and the children that come from those communities, or the students that come from those communities. So I was really thinking too about how, where we look for what should inform us as teachers. Like sometimes we just look at policies, or we look at established curriculum, or maybe like leaders of particular movements, but we should also be looking at our communities. We should be looking at our students. What is it that has sustained you through colonization, through these hard times? And I think it's often these joyful aspects that maybe we haven't done a good job of as educators, or as researchers, or as scholars, of naming their power and naming what it is, like the pedagogical power that they have. And I think we could learn so much from them, just even in the ways that those spaces are multi-generational, and we don't have a particular term for it, but everybody's included, the babies, the grandmas, the people who can dance, the people who can't dance, the people who can sing, the people who can't sing. Everybody's there. Everybody's a part of it. So I was thinking of that, and Son Jarocho is that for me. But I think that there is those traditions in other communities. It may not be Son Jarocho, but I think if we look to our communities, that is a source of knowledge that as educators we should be definitely tapping into.
Yeah, I you know, that's really resonating with me. You know, we often talk about how culturally sustaining pedagogy, if it may be a name or a term that's useful, but it's something that communities have always been involved in, have always sought to center and sustain intergenerationally, the ones to come, to the youngest, to the elders, to the ancestors, through teaching and learning. It's what we do. I think, you know, that's it's life and school in so many ways, and these institutions are, you know, in so many ways life taking, not life giving, as my good friend and colleague Anthony Craig, the Yakima scholar here, who also works at UW, talks about, right? And so, where is the life giving? Go there, and then teach and learn from that. Jennifer Gregorio, something coming up for you in this conversation, sort of around teaching and learning, educator potential, and also around these ideas of voice and identity. Jennifer, you wanna start?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that comes up to mind is the how classes tend to be so disconnected from teacher to student. Um, and really, Son Jarocho, what it did was introduce a whole new way of learning, a way that
Mm,
really invites us as students to be present, to not just merely come in class, sit, and just take in the information the teacher is giving, but really circle up and, really connect to one another in a much deeper level in a way that connects to our experiences, our emotions, um, and the happiness, but also like the conflicts, the
mm,
um, trauma, anything that we're experiencing in life, because those do affect us,
of course.
in the way that we present ourselves in class, in these spaces. And I think what it did, Son Jarocho, and this community, most of all, is just allowed me to be present, to present myself as my full, authentic self, unapologetic, as undocumented, because I did in so many years. Um, really kept that part of my identity hidden. I did not feel like I I was fully present in class, but until I came into these spaces, that's when I really drew deep into myself and started exploring what that meant, what that status meant, but then also how community could be a way to heal these emotions, these experiences in ways that
Hmm.
could be very beautiful. And that's what it did. And the singing part, oh my God, it was very hard. It was very hard, but it allowed me to bring that voice that I have, that strong voice I have inside me.
Ooh. That is an amazing. So much about what you shared is so important. The idea of like bringing your full self unapologetically, just so powerful. And to think about what that means, sort of pedagogically, those sort of invitations. But I also really am struck by that idea of how hard it is, right? And I think that's important to recognize too. The kind of I'm only imagining as someone who's not a practitioner, what you must give, and the sort of the commitment, right, in order to learn. And I think, in so many ways we ask that of ourselves and others for any subject or for any, right. And so thank you for bringing that. Gregorio, anything coming up for you?
I was invited to go to Fandango on a campus separate from the Central Valley, somewhere near
Hmm.
LA.
Hmm.
And it was really last minute, but it was me and another uh, individual who had been in the first Blossom. So it was like two
Mm.
generations of musicians playing. And I was like, okay, cool. I've never played with them before formally at a Fandango. This is going to be really cool. And we had gassed up, got ready to drive down for like 6 hours down to LA. And I'm
Oof.
like, oh man, I'm going to be so nervous. I don't know what to expect on this campus. It's going to be so intimidating. And then when we got there, I'm like, oh, okay. I wasn't scared of the campus. I was scared about playing the music. And
Oh.
it wasn't just necessarily the music. It was like, oh man, am I gonna be able to play and catch up with these folks, these students, because they were doing something similar that we were doing on our
Right.
campus. They were using it as a
Right.
practice to teach and learn. And I was impressed, amazed, stunned, humbled. Everything that they were learning, we had experienced, but their conditions was much more
Mm.
from a positive place. And
Mm.
you can see how that confidence grew with them when they were playing, because they they had this, weirdly enough, in the Fandango circle, when you don't know something, you don't just like pause and stop. You kind of just like look at the person next to you and you kind of look for your tempo. So like sometimes with the strumming thing, it's like is it 1, 2, up, or 1, down, down, up? And then you kind of just like look over and it's like, okay, cool. And then you jump right into it.
Yeah, sure.
And so seeing that happen with another group in a different campus on a different location of the state was just like, oh wow, they have had so much time together to practice, and the learning experience was so much similar and identical to ours. It was just very reassuring to know that we were all learning at the same pace, but under different
Mm.
circumstances. And that must have been because of the teachers, the elders, the music really touched them in a way that they felt connected to the music that we had.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, it's so important for us to hear that story. So thank you for choosing that one because I could see you were like, I could literally say give you 30 stories right now. But that one is so important for us to think about how some of this work might carry to other contexts or has always carried across contexts. Obviously across the things that have come to be known as borders, and on lands and in communities. I think that's really important for those of us interested in learning from this work to think about, well, what, and you had said it earlier, Kwepanka, that all communities, and Lirio, you also mentioned this, all communities have ways, many musical and other sort of artistic and practices that sustain life, and to kind of find those within the communities that you're part of and or in solidarity with, and to think about how they are already pedagogical and what they might mean for a space. And so you all are making me think of so many examples, right, as you're sharing. So as I was saying a little earlier, the book is full of these extraordinary narratives where each of you take time to share your experience, and what this has meant for you. And we've been gifted to hear some of that today. And so as we kind of head toward the end of the conversation, I want to hold up some words from Julissa Ruiz Ramirez, who is the other co-author. And so it's really nice to have her words as part of this space as well. She offers an example of story, action, and pedagogy as medicine in her narrative of traveling to Washington, D.C. in 2021 for a protest to stand with migrant and all peoples. So she writes, quote, "We rose up against the powers that be, against xenophobia, against racism, against militarization of the border, against sexism, fighting for immigrant rights as a minimum. We are fighting for humanity's survival toward a step in land back and a free Palestine. We banded together in solidarity, one struggle becoming ours, our responsibility to carry through. Tu eres mi otro yo, you are my other me. Although the injustices and violences brought upon the system by systems of oppression are much less likely to be addressed within the larger community, in the sones of Son Jarocho, we sing and showcase both the world as it is and the world as it should be." And you had kind of mentioned that a little bit before too, Kwepanka. And I think this is such a beautiful invitation. And I wonder if these necessary words that Julisha shares, if any of you have something to share more, although you already have, right, about how Son Jarocho, Fandango, and teaching and learning in community with each other can engage the world as it is, and also the world as it should be, or as we're building it to be, or as I was listening to you, Gregorio and Jennifer, as it was in those moments and in that time. It's like, oh, this is the world as it should be. So is anything resonating maybe with just a couple of you? Kwepanka, do you have anything there?
Sure. Yes. I mean, as we mentioned earlier, these are unrelenting times. And I think, parents can say, when we were younger, it wasn't, as bad as it is now. And,
Right.
we just keep, the colonial train is moving so fast. And certainly here in the United States, as we're looking at this very unstable genocidal political landscape,
That's
this
right.
violence is all over the world, Palestine and Congo, and the climate crisis.
That's right.
Genocide. I mean, what can we do? As a mother of a 6-year-old, I worry about the future that my son will inherit. But then I think resiliency, and I'm not sure if I really like that word very much, but
Right.
continued dignity. that
Mhm.
draw from our own genetic memories, our DNA structure, the ways in which our peoples from all over the world have moved and have migrated and have stood up to this political injustice.
Always.
Be persevering, and what better way than to reconnect with our bodies, with our song, with our tapping on this tarima, on this wooden plank, with resourcing instruments from like an old wooden can or an old aluminum,
Mm.
just this kind of street and agricultural kind of expression that will always resound. And that to me is very hopeful. It's this radical love, this radical joy that is in the struggle, that speaks and sings about this struggle. In the 1800s, it was really, El Chuchumbe was a song that was speaking up against sexual repression and saying,
Mhm.
what you got under those cloaks and those robes. I mean, why is this so bad if this is how humanity will continue to persevere, right? So we're doing the same thing. We're doing it here in, what some people call 2024, and we'll go into the future with learning how to develop this relationship with our bodies and our ancestral sones. We'll create lyrics. They say that a song doesn't have a beginning and it doesn't have an end because
Oh, wow.
don't know who created these songs originally, um, and we're constantly recreating them in our context. So there's no one fandango that will always appear the same. We will always create it as we move through the world. And so with these tools, with this ancestral power, knowledge, and wisdom, and oftentimes, so many of us, because have we've had enslavement in our families. We don't know, where. We can't point to a map and say, this is where my
That's
family
right.
is now. But, I tend to think our genetic memory is strong, and we can see in our dreams and things that our intuition leads us to, in this cultural intuition that Dolores Delgado Bernal reminds us about, is
That's right.
have these assets that we can continue to nurture in community, and also rely on community to check us because we have blind spots, right? And just to
That's right.
call people in versus calling them out, we have all of these
Mhm.
issues. So what better way than to do it with music and joy?
And one of the things you're reminding me of too, as you kind of share there, and I'm thinking of Jennifer and Gregorio, just of your kind of your sharing today and in the book, along with Julissa, is so if we are teachers or educators or folks that are in community with others in sort of teaching and learning contexts, we have choices in front of us. And all the things you mentioned that Julissa has mentioned in this quote are in front of us, are happening, have been happening. And so we have some choices to make, right? And the choices that you made, Kwepanka, that you made, Lirio, that this collective has made, is an invitation into building the world we need in in a small way, in a small space, and then that grows. And then, as you were talking about Kwepanka, there's a community here on Coast Salish lands in Seattle. Gregorio, you were talking about driving across the valley into LA and linking with the community there, and to kind of think of this really on broader scales, thinking of the amazing scale of sort of global political education of this year and these past years. And so I really appreciate that. I often end these conversations by saying, as many have said before, another world is possible and another educational world is possible. And I think what you all are showing us and what many show us is that it's already here and that we can experience it together. And so before we end, I just want to thank a couple of people. Our research assistant, Siada Padmore, for her production work, and also Charlene Wilcox here in the College of Education. These folks really help us get this thing done and out and do really beautiful and important work. I also wanted to thank our TC Press editor, Emily Spangler, and everybody at Teachers College Press for their work to get this book out into the world, and all their work on our CSP series titles. And so I thought we might end by hearing some more music, another sone, if anybody is feeling that that might be good.
Well, I can go ahead and play a song. I'm a little worried that my internet's unstable, so I'm not sure if it will land the way I send it, but I'm sending it with good intentions. And the song that
Thank
I'm
you so
gonna
much.
play, oh, thank you. And the song that I'm gonna play is El pájaro cool, and it's a bird, and the story of the bird is it's a messenger bird. So there's all kinds of lyrics. This is actually one where there's a call and response. I know with Zoom we can't do that, but there is parts in it where the singer sings and then others listen and respond. So, pajarito eres bonito y de bonito color, qué bonito color, pajarito eres bonito. Pero más bonito fueras si me hicieras el favor de llevarle un recadito a la dueña de mi amor. Tírame una lima y tírame limón. Tírame las llaves de tu hermoso corazón. Eres mi prenda querida, eres mi prenda adorada. Eres aquella paloma que canta a la madrugada.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for that, Livio. Thank you all for this beautiful work.